I really reached the top. Here's where we kind of have another up and down. Is I felt I reached the top when we got to the Playboy Mansion. I've mentioned this on other interviews, but when you get to the Playboy Mansion with Emma Stone and John Lovitz and David Spade and Adam Sandler and these folks, I'm going, I have arrived.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Hey everybody, so that was Mr. John M.'s voice that you heard at the beginning of this episode today. Not me, John M., but another John M. from the Nashville, Tennessee area. And John M. has been on a, for lack of a better term, I guess, a wild ride, both before he got sober and after getting sober. And we talk about the 7-second incident, which was an auto accident that changed John's life forever. He ended up losing his leg from the knee down, and he describes that in detail. And we talk about his visit to the Playboy Mansion and how he ended up getting there. John addresses sex addiction, cross addiction, his involvement with SA. I believe I've got that right. Sex Anonymous, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or I got the right acronym. And one of the I guess most captivating moments, at least for me, during this interview, when he talks about the day his brother did not show up for work, and he got that call, and eventually what that ended up meaning for him and in his life. And so before we get on to that, though, I just want to put out another call for those if there's anybody out there who would be interested in moderating a Facebook group for Sober Speak, just let me know. It may work, it may not, it may be a fit, but we shall see. And I have 3 specific asks of you this week. Number 1, if you are enjoying Sober Speak, and if there's any one of the speakers that have resonated with you, would you please take a moment and share that episode or the podcast in general with a friend? I would surely appreciate it. I spend a lot of time with these guests, and they pour out their heart, and they're vulnerable, and I absolutely love what they put down on tape, and I just want it to be shared with as many people as possible. If indeed you are an iTunes subscriber, I've never asked this before, but apparently all the podcasters do this. If you're an iTunes subscriber, please leave us a review on iTunes. Apparently it really helps in the I guess what you would call the algorithms, and how people end up finding Sober Speak. Ultimately it's God's will, but if you can, great. If not, hey, I still want you listening, right? And then the third thing is that you can follow me on Instagram. I would love to have you follow me on Instagram. We're getting a lot of discussions going there recently. So, and that's Sober Speak, all one word. And this is not an ask, but this is more of a program note. I want to let you know if you are wondering how can I listen to, what's the easiest way to get notifications for Sober Speak, you can actually text the word sober, SOBER. By the way, this is in the United States only, but you can text the word sober, SOBER, to 31996. Now, a little bit of feedback. We had some listener feedback this week from Miss Jenna S. Jenna writes in, she says, I have been sober since July 21st, 2014, but about 6 weeks ago, I had what I guess could be described as a spiritual awakening. Even though I was sober, I was miserable as ever. Can anybody else relate to that out there? I was a tornado in the lives of others, as it describes on page 82 of the big book. I was having trouble in relationships, and I felt so very disconnected from God. A friend recommended listening to Wayne Dyer podcast, so I downloaded Podbean, the app, and immediately started to check him out. Then, out of curiosity, I searched the word, quote, sober, unquote, and came up with Sober Speak. I really enjoy the discussion format. It really gives new depth and weight to the recovery stories. I, in particular, enjoyed Brenda J. I heard her story on a different podcast, so it was awesome to hear the dialogue between you two and get to know her better. I am very busy thanks to my sobriety, of course, 2 children, age 9 and 8, a full-time job, a volunteer work, meetings, etc. Listening to podcasts at my desk at work has become paramount to my sobriety and has helped catapult my recovery over these last 6 weeks into a new dimension. I am so grateful for finding you! Exclamation point. Thank you so much for your service! Exclamation point. Jenna S. of St. Louis, Missouri, here in the United States. Well, Jenna S., thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the feedback. I've said this before in other podcasts, but feedback like this and other comments that I get absolutely put gas in my tank, and I can't thank you anymore. By the way, the podcast that she referenced there, Brenda J. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I'm not looking at the episode number right now, but it's about 4 or 5 episodes back from this one that I'm publishing here. Definitely go back and listen to Brenda J. It'll knock your socks off, I promise. So, one more thing, and then we are going to get on to Mr. John M. from Nashville. And I was recently at a confirmation ceremony for my son. He is a middle schooler. He was going through what is referred to as confirmation at church. It's a process to where kids kind of accept faith on their own for their own selves, as opposed to what their parents have been telling them up to now. And the youth pastor at our church, an absolutely fantastic youth pastor, he does wonderful things with the kids. He was addressing a group of confirmation students regarding their own personal faith. And as he was addressing those kids, it made me think of step 3 in Alcoholics Anonymous. And just in case you don't know what step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So the youth pastor at our church said, like he said, he was addressing them about their faith, and he gave this particular analogy. He had read an article recently about a young man who dives for exotic fish for aquariums. He said that one of the most popular aquariums in the fish tank is the shark. He explained that if you catch a small shark and confine it, it will stay at a size proportionate to the aquarium that you put it in. Sharks can be 6 inches long, yet fully matured. But if you turn them loose into the ocean, they will grow to their normal length of 8 feet. That same things that happens to sharks can happen to our faith. We have to take care of our faith, and it is entirely our responsibility. So I would say to those listening out there in regards to recovery, no one can make me go to meetings. No one can make me pray for others. No one can force me to go do service work. No one can make me believe in God. I have to choose to do that for myself. And if I never pray, I never go to meetings, I never work the steps, I will not grow. Now on to Mr. John M. from Nashville. Enjoy. Okay, everybody, so we're sitting here with this is unusual, at least for me. I've never had another John M. on the program, but we are sitting here with Mr. John M., and he is actually, when I say sitting here, he's not eyeball to eye. Well, he is eyeball to eyeball with me. We can see each other, but he is in the great city of Nashville, Tennessee. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on. So John and I have been communicating back and forth for a while, trying to get him set up to get on Sober Speak here and get him recorded. And I'm really anxious to hear his story today. I think I've heard bits and pieces of it. I think the Sober Speak audience is definitely going to relate to it. So John, let's dive into your story. I like you said, I know there are lots of ups and downs with that. Why don't you just kind of take us back to the beginning, wherever you want to start. We'll work our way up, and I'll probably have some questions here and there as you're moving through it.
Okay. So I grew up in a wonderful household, wonderful parents, loving family. Both sets of grandparents were extremely supportive. I grew up in great town of San Antonio, Texas. And from a very early age, I felt different. I felt not quite a part of. Something wasn't right with me. And I didn't figure it out until I was about 35. And I can tell you why here in a little bit. But from an early age, I just didn't feel quite right. And I felt like, now looking back, that disease of addiction was always there, and there was a spark inside of my soul that was always there, and it got ignited through some trauma later on in my life. Once that trauma ignited it, then I was off to the races, and I couldn't stop. Now, growing up with a loving family and great support system, I was Mr. Personality. In high school, I graduated with senior year in high school with senior superlatives at prom. I was named class clown, most outgoing, most school spirited, and best personality. And I thought I just had it all. And I go off to college, and things just kind of rolled easy for me. Ended up my senior year at Baylor University. I was social chairman of our fraternity. I was had a full ride scholarship. I had earned full ride scholarship my senior year. Same scholarship athletes got. I wasn't an athlete by any means, but I was part of the athletic teams and doing video work as a communications major.
Oh, so you can get a scholarship going in there doing video work for the athletic program, right?
Yes, yeah. There's all these little loopholes if you pay attention, and if you find something in your major or something in a field of study that you're going into. I had no idea, but I had some fraternity brothers that they paid for their 4 years of school by doing video. They did video in high school, and they got into college and did it. And one of them graduated, and I got his scholarship my senior year.
Very nice.
So, yeah, it was really cool. So
and
I felt like
Baylor, for those that don't know, I mean, that's down here where I am in Texas. It is it's a prestigious school. It's a very expensive. It's a private school, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Private Baptist University. Yeah.
Yeah, Baptist University. So it sounds like you had some sort of religious upbringing. Then is that right?
Yeah. So growing up, Southern Baptist. My grandfather was I would say semi-famous preacher. He came up at the same time in Minnesota as Billy Graham. So he and Billy Graham were friends early on. So much so that they stayed friends throughout the years. And when my grandfather passed, Billy sent flowers to his funeral. And so I grew up, in the Baptist church, and that was a big part of our lives. Of course, when I got into college and got into the drinking scene with the fraternity, that stuff kind of faded into the background. That spiritual connection that my parents tried to instill in me growing up took a back seat for sure. And my ego started running the show. Again, coming out of high school, I had this ego building up that I had it all together. Going to college, I'm doing the fraternity thing. I'm dating our fraternity sweetheart, who's a cheerleader, and I got a full ride scholarship. And things were looking really good my senior year, and it all changed in a 7-second incident. I'd set up this
7-second incident.
7 seconds that changed everything for me.
What was that?
That was a car accident, and there was no drinking or driving was involved. We were coming back from a cruise I had set up for about 45 friends and fraternity brothers and friends. We went from Waco, Texas to New Orleans. We go on this booze cruise for spring break, and we're coming back from this trip, and we're all just kind of hungover and pretty tired. And we're driving on I-45 outside of Houston, going back to Waco, and a tire blew out in a friend's car. And there was 4 of us in the SUV. Nothing anybody could have done differently. The driver just had the cruise set on 70, beautiful weather out, and tire blows out, right rear tire. I was in the back rear passenger seat, and the car just started shaking violently. And in that moment, I told myself, no, this isn't about to happen. It's not about to happen. And as the car drifted toward the median, as soon as we hit the grass, I said, this is it. I'm going to die right now. And the car did like a 180 and then just started rolling. So the car just flipped around. And as it flipped and did this 180, my feet got out the window. My legs somehow got out, just got out the window. And I had my seatbelt on, so I was held in place. Otherwise, I would have been ejected out of the car. So thankfully, I was held in place, but my legs got crushed numerous times. Conscious the whole time, seeing it happen, the metal crashing and the glass everywhere. And I mean, just the force that you're going with, you feel just completely out of control. And I was waiting for everything to just turn to black. Like at the end of a movie, just everything just shuts down. I was waiting for like the color bars to come up. In video work, we would put color bars up before or after some of our video work. I was just waiting for these color, and then you hear that tone, that ding. I was just waiting for the end. And the car comes to a stop. Witness reports say we rolled between 6 and 12 times. But we rolled across the median, across the other side of the interstate. We missed some cars that were coming at us, and we landed in a field. And as the car landed upside down, came to a stop, I'm thinking it's going to blow up, it's going to blow up, it's going to blow up, because that's what happens in the movies. And so I tried to get out. And as I did, I stood, or I put my legs at the edge of the window, and I tried to stand up. And as I looked down, I could see the bottom of my foot. My ankle was severed in half. And so the bottom of my right foot wrapped around. And so it was essentially hanging on by muscle fibers. Bones were completely split up. I could see bones on both sides of my shin and my ankle. And my foot was just kind of dangling, if you can imagine that. And so I threw myself out of the car, and I crawled, as far away as I could until I felt safe that if it blew up, I wasn't going to get hurt. And I looked back, and my 3 friends are still in the car. And so I said, you know what, if this car blows up and I'm not helping, then I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I said, I'm going in, whether it blows up or not. So I crawled in, got one friend out. 2 friends one was pinned in from the car crashing in on her head. And so her boyfriend was up front tending to her. She was in the driver's seat. And so the car never did explode, thankfully. But imagine, these scenes in a movie when you have, you got police cars coming in, you got fire trucks, you got ambulances. They have the jaws of life coming out, and they're cutting my friend Ashley out of the driver's seat. And as they're cutting her out, the helicopter life flight comes in and lands on the side in the field next to us. I mean, it's just this absolute terror of a scene. And I'm just laying there with a blanket over my legs at this point, just in complete shock, waiting for the first set of first responders to get to Ashley. And they pull her out of the car, and they get her in the helicopter, and she passed away before they got her to hospital.
Oh man! So
her name was Ashley Furman. I try to say her name to keep her memory alive. She's just a sweet gal, 19 years old, and didn't do anything wrong to deserve it. So I ended up, my journey took me from getting me to the first hospital, taking me over to...
real quick, did they ever... Do you know what do you know why the tires blew up or whatever happened there to make that occur?
Yeah, good question. Sometimes I breeze over that because it's not something I always tell people, but I don't mind sharing it here. It was a Firestone Ford Explorer rollover. So back in 2000, they had recalled millions of Firestone tires because tread was separating off this one particular type of tire, coupled with the Ford Explorer was rolling and killing people across the country. Both companies knew about it. They covered it up, and we were one of the victims.
Oh my goodness.
So that does come into play pretty heavily, if you can imagine. And I'll go into that here in just a minute. But as I ended up going through 14 surgeries in a year, I went from being super egotistical. I had everything going for me at school and super connected with, social life and in classes. And now all of a sudden I'm home in my dad's home office in a hospital bed by myself, going through surgery after surgery after surgery to try to save my feet. And
to try to save your feet, is that what you said?
Well, yeah, both of them were injured, but my right one was more severely injured. So my quality of life kept declining. I had to have a shoe with a special sole built up on it. I was losing height in my right side as the bone structure started to collapse over that year, and through all those surgeries, there wasn't good blood flow to the ankle. Just a lot of contamination from the accident, a lot of dirt and gravel and grass and all that stuff. When I crawled in and out of the car a couple times, just picked up all this debris, and it never really could all flush out and heal adequately. So I finally got to the point where they took one of my abdominal muscles out already and attached it into this hole I had in the foot. So they basically just kind of put a piece of meat on the side of my foot and let that heal to take up that space. So, it just looked deformed, and it was just a bad situation. 23, 22-year-old active kid, not being able to hardly move around. I was on a cane everywhere. I was in a lot of pain, and I was depressed and gaining weight, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do and be with my friends. And so then the doctors came and said, well, we're going to need to fuse your ankle, but we're going to need to take bone out of your hip and do a bone graft. And I'm going, man, amputation was always in the back of my mind, because I told myself at the side of the accident, they're going to cut this thing off. And so when it came to it, they wanted to do more surgeries. I was like, man, can we just let this thing go? And so I went ahead and opted to make that decision to go ahead and amputate. So I have a below the knee amputation on my right side. That
how did that change you? I'm sure it did in some form.
Well, it gave me a better quality of life physically, but I never dealt with the underlying issues. I never dealt with that terror and that fear and that, like, I'm going to die in these moments. And not just, then there's that. And then there's all the surgeries and all the trauma of seeing my leg just, I had like ooze coming out of my leg, and I had this stuff like little pieces of gauze down in these holes in the foot. And just gruesome stuff that I never thought I'd be dealing with. And so I thought I would cut the leg off. And I think this ties into recovery. The problem is alcohol, or the problem is an addiction. Well, if I just stop doing that, then my life's going to be okay. So I thought if I cut the problem off, the bum ankle, the bum foot, then I'm going to be okay. And so I did. I cut the leg off, and I got a prosthetic on, and I was off to the races. I was skydiving and doing triathlons, and I was more active after my amputation than before, because I wanted to, prove to myself or really prove other people that I was fine. But I didn't deal with the underlying emotional turmoil. And so no matter what I did physically, it didn't matter what I accomplished physically, emotionally and spiritually, I was always distraught.
And I'm assuming this is similar to post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it was crazy. I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD for like a decade. Why didn't anybody figure that out? I don't know. Part of it was I was lying. I wasn't honest with my doctors because I wanted pills, and I was drinking a lot. And part of it was I wasn't being honest. But you think somebody would have, hey, you just went through a major ordeal. We should look at PTSD as a diagnosis.
Right. Okay. So then after that, you talked about the alcohol and the drugs. So did it take off after that, your alcohol and drug usage?
Yeah. So it just, skyrocketed. And I got the pain pill. I was, using the pain pills as prescribed really that year of all those surgeries. I was under my parents' care, and I was, but once I got out on my own, and I graduated Baylor I walked the stage on a temporary prosthetic 6 weeks after my amputation. And I was determined to show everybody I was okay. And so keep alcohol and pills, in my system, and I could go, and I had the confidence to go do anything that I wanted to go do. And I ended up leaving everything I knew in Texas to go work on a master's in counseling out in San Diego. So that was another kind of disconnect for me. I was leaving everything I knew to go pursue something that I thought was, going to be serving others.
So how did that bridge come about? How did you think about going from Baylor out to San Diego to be a counselor?
Okay, so here's where the money comes in. So as a result of the car accident, I signed settlement, multi-million-dollar settlement the day before I graduated college. Wow. So yeah, so I already, I had this like kind of ego with my scholarship in college. I felt like an athlete. And then here I go, I'm about to go into the real world. And I just signed this contract at a Schlotzsky's on I-35 in Waco, Texas with my attorney and my dad sitting there. And here's a couple $1 million, and I'm graduating the next day. And all my family and friends are in town, great, John's graduating. And so I had, a fallback. I had a job set up out of Baylor, and I was there a couple of months, and I was like, you know what? I want to go help other people. It's like this tragedy happened to me for a reason. I want to go help other people and not just do some, business sales kind of job that I originally had. So because I had some fallback money, I just quit the job. I didn't talk to anybody about it, didn't consult anybody about it. I just went in one day and said, this isn't for me. There was also a lot of drugs in my system during those days that kept me from thinking straight and thinking rationally. But it didn't really matter because I had some money,
When you say drugs, were they more prescription drugs?
Yes. Yeah. Prescription drugs. Correct. And so it had progressed from alcohol in college to then I got the pain pills, and then I couldn't focus because I'm using the opiates. And so then I go to a doctor and I get Adderall for ADD. I'm diagnosed with ADD, which was kind of also part of my PTSD, the focus part. And I started using that immediately. Then I couldn't sleep because of all the Adderall I was on. So I got sleeping pills, and then I'm taking this Ambien while drinking. And so these, constant cocktail in my system for years.
And so how you were what, 22, 23, 24?
23, yeah, 23. Yeah, 23 at this point. And I just said, you know what, if I go get a master's in counseling, let me see what are the best schools. And so 2 of the top 5 schools were Boston University, where my brother was living in Boston, and then San Diego State. So I interviewed with both. I got accepted to both. And so I could either go Boston, East Coast, or San Diego, West Coast. And I was like, I got to go out to the sun. I got to go out to San Diego. It's hard to pass up.
You're right. So is that when you took the money from the settlement and then you went out to invest that in yourself with good intentions to be a counselor and make good in the world, correct?
Correct. And then, I got out there, I bought a condo on Mission Bay. You buy a, 24-year-old dude buying a $450,000 condo on Mission Bay who's not in his right mind, not a good idea. Bought several pieces of property in Texas as an investment to develop, and that just, oh my gosh, attorneys and got screwed. And then I bought a piece of property in San Diego as well to maybe build a house on one day, and that took 8 years to get out of that, and thousands and thousands of dollars of attorney's fees there. So just because you have money does not mean your problems go away. If anything, they just get more expensive.
No, in fact, I've heard many times that money will just make you more of what you are already.
Yes. It made me more selfish, made me more self-centered. It made me more egotistical. All these things that I already was, it just magnifies what you already are. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's okay. So true.
All right. So you're in San Diego. You're working your way through counseling school. I'm sorry, that's probably not the term for it, but you're out there, you're trying to get your master's, and take me from there.
Yeah. So I had started dating a girl that I knew at Baylor, and not the same girl that was in our accident, but we ended up getting married. And so she moved out after my second year in graduate school. So she moved out. And
so were you married and she wasn't with you in San Diego? Is that what you mean?
No. So when I moved out to San Diego, we started dating. And then, so we dated for a year and we're engaged for a year. And so we were together for 2 years. We were engaged, dated and engaged for 2 years, but we never lived in the same state. So she had no idea what she was getting into. Oh, man. Because I could put on the act, for weekend, 3-4 day weekends or the holidays. in terms of my substance abuse and alcohol. So when she moved in, it didn't take her very long to start scratching her head and going, something's not right. But neither of us really, I didn't know how bad I was. She didn't know anything about alcoholism or addiction. And so she just told her parents, something's not right. I can't put my finger on it. And I was just a master, chameleon. I would just kind of rotate from one substance to the other to try not to get caught with one thing or the other. However, it progressed to doing things I never thought I would do. I'm growing, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the church, in Baptist church, and kind of famous grandfather preacher. And next thing you know, I'm driving to Tijuana to go buy pain pills and sneaking stuff across the border in Mexico, and I'm stuff I never thought I would do. And it just was very lonely. I was very lonely. I was afraid of anything and everything. I was afraid of what other people thought of me. I was afraid of what I thought of myself. I was afraid of getting caught. I was afraid of
caught with the drugs and the alcohol and the lifestyle you're relating. So it was a double Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Yes, because I've always had this nice persona, and he's the nice guy, and that's generational too with my family that I've had to learn and work through therapy, is that I can't just put on this front all the time. I've got to be able to break down and be okay, not being okay.
And that's a big reason why I wanted to have you on Sober Speak today, because I knew that, I had heard one other recording of you, and I had seen some of your bio, if you will. And I knew that you were very vulnerable about where you've been, what happens to you. And vulnerability is what comes through on these podcasts. Just real quick, I'm going to do a little announcement here, then we'll go on with the rest of your story. We'll be continuing with our conversation with Mr. John M. in a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the web at soberspeak.com. There you will find all of our back episodes. There's 50 plus of them. You can also find the donate button on our website. If the spirit moves you to do, please keep in mind this podcast is funded by you, the listener. Sober Speak is a self-supporting organization through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. We do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. Okay, now back to Mr. John M. Sitting here with John M. So John, we're in San Diego. Your wife has now kind of caught wind of your particular lifestyle. She's kind of scratching her head. Take me from there.
Yeah, so it just so happened I get to the end of my third year of graduate. It was a 3-year program, rigorous program. I get to the end of it, and I realize, not real consciously, but subconsciously, knowing I can't really go help other people because I've never really helped myself. Going and working in counseling, I was able to focus on other people. I was able to learn how to focus on other people and how to help them with their problems. But all along, I was avoiding my own. I think a lot of people do that in their work, and their nurses and people who are in well-meaning jobs go to serve others. But if you don't serve yourself first, if you don't take the oxygen mask off in a airplane, cabin pressure, change. If you don't put the mask on you first, then you can't help the other people around you. And so that I've learned through my journey that it was a diversion from having to really look at me, so that I could just look at other folks. And so I got to the end of the program, and I'm about to graduate in May, and somewhere around April or May, my cousin calls me up. He's an actor. His name's Josh Henderson. Not a big name, but he's been Desperate Housewives and a number of shows and projects, movies over the years. And so he calls me up and says, "Hey, I've got this biggest role I've had to date. I'm going to play this amputee soldier. I'm going to get my leg blown off in this roadside bomb IED. Can you take me through what you went through in your car accident to help me connect with my character?" And I was like, "Sure, man, that's kind of cool. What are the odds?" And so we started talking on the phone and started walking him through what I went through and the helicopter landing on the side of the road and everything. And he goes, "Yeah, in this scene, they're going to have a helicopter land on the side of the road, and the guy's going to come and try to pick me up, and my leg's going to separate, and the medic's going to be holding my limb, my foot in his hand." I was like, "Yeah, man, that's real similar to me." I said, "Hey, man, if you need any more help on set or anything, let me know." So sure enough, one thing led to another. They told him to bring me up. The producers and directors said, bring your cousin up to LA. We want to take a look at him. And so I showed up on, they were doing a boot camp training before the season started. It was a show called Over There on FX. It just lasted one season. So it wasn't super popular. But they ended up hiring me on. They said, you're hired on for 13 episodes that we're filming. You're going to be called the technical consultant. And we're going to have you on set every day and make sure everything looks accurate. What kind of prosthetic would he have if he's just getting out of rehab? What kind of prosthetic would he have if he's going to go to try to train to get back into battle? His character was going to get addicted to painkillers, right? And so I was like, perfect, man. I didn't even have to act. I just had to show up and just be me, So I basically kind of left my wife in San Diego, and I was so caught up in my own addictions and drinking and prescription pills that I pretty much just said, I'm going to LA to do my thing. You're doing your nanny job down here. I'll talk to you later was the message that I sent to her. And so to work in the industry in LA, you got to be there. So here I go. I bought a condo in LA, got a condo in San Diego, got a condo in LA. I'm feeling like a rock star because People Magazine and Access Hollywood and these national media outlets came up to interview me and my cousin. And I'm thinking, man, I just slid right into it. I just, great opportunity. How many people on their first, TV show, their first opportunity to be on a major Hollywood set, get People Magazine coming out and interviewing you? It doesn't happen that often. You normally take some time for People Magazine to come knocking at your door. And so I was thinking, man, this is easy. Everything's just coming easy to me. And so I moved up to LA full time. I got an agent. The show after 13 episodes got canned. And so I said, hey, there's a nice little niche in the industry. I'm gonna ride this out and see what happens. So I got into acting classes, got an agent, started playing the game, and ended up working over a couple of years doing that on NCIS and ER. Some people might know me from I've got one scene or really one word in the movie Superbad. A lot of my generation knows that movie. Got a scene with Jonah Hill in that. I'm the prosthetic guy on the prosthetic leg that jogs past Jonah Hill and curses at him as I run past him on the track. And so things kept building little by little in LA, as well as my addiction, and as well as tension in the marriage, tension at home. But we had to put up I had to put up this front that everything was okay. And my wife started talking to people on the side, hey, something's going on. He's drinking a lot. Pills are going missing. Spilling marijuana around the house. Just things just continue to progress.
How long are you married at this time? Couple years, something like that?
At this point, we got married in 2004. This is like 2007, 2008.
Okay.
So we had our firstborn son there. And my brother had moved out to LA from New York. He was struggling with addiction. And he got out of New York, moved to LA to kind of be closer to us. And I really reached the top. Here's where we kind of have another up and down. Is I felt I reached the top when we got to the Playboy Mansion. I've mentioned this on other interviews, but when you get to the Playboy Mansion with Emma Stone and John Lovitz and David Spade and Adam Sandler and these folks, I'm going, I have arrived. This is what guy doesn't want to move to Hollywood and get blown up on major sets with blood and guts and go to the Playboy Mansion with some of my idols like Adam Sandler and David Spade. You guys, I know all their movies. And
okay, so I have to ask you, right? Did you meet Hugh Hefner there, or was he there that day?
They had security pretty tight around. Yeah, he was there. I asked if I could get into his tent, and security just shook their head. No.
Oh, he has his own particular tent. How does that work?
Well, it was a party. It was after a red carpet event for a movie premiere, and the after party was at the Playboy Mansion. So we go there, and each of the major actors and actresses in the movies had their own cabana kind of tent. And so he had his tent kind of right in the middle. And so I asked if I could get in there, and they were like,
not this time. No,
you're nobody.
No,
get out of here.
That was worth a shot.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know if you don't ask.
All right. So I diverted you. Yeah? The Playboy Mansion caught my attention there, right? So go ahead.
Yeah. So, that experience happened, and it was just about 2 months after that we got the dreaded phone call that my brother didn't show up for work. And he was my best friend, my only sibling, and it concerned me, given his history of substance use and our complete neglect as a family to address it because of the stigma of addiction. That stigma that kept me from stepping out of the shadows sooner, and kept my brother from us encouraging my brother to get the help that he really needed, the life-saving help he needed. That stigma, took him down. Unfortunately, he passed away from an overdose in his Beverly Hills home, and he was found by none other than me.
Oh wow!
And I've got to be honest with you, it was 10 years ago today.
Today,
10 years ago today, I kicked in my brother's door in his room and saw 196 people die of overdose a day in the United States right now. 196 overdoses a day. My brother was just one. These are real families. These are real people. These are real hearts and souls that need help through treatment and through 12-step work and through therapy. And if you don't get the people who need the help, if you don't get them the help that they need, it can lead to exactly what happened with my brother.
Okay, so I want to be respectful of you, especially on this day. But I can see, right, you all can't see John right now. I can see him. His eyes are closed, and it definitely brought up something within you and some sort of images that you're seeing for yourself. So if you want to dive into that a little bit further, what you discovered with your brother and what it brought up for you and what it means to you today, you can. But if not, you want to go on to something else, I completely understand.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm okay. The thing I've learned in recovery is that feelings really don't last that long. I push feelings away for so long. I just don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel it. I want everybody to think that I'm okay. I want to lie to myself and say that I'm okay. But right now in this moment, if I'm not okay, that's okay. I can be sad, and it's not going to last for years. It's going to last for a little bit of time. Do a little breathing. I'm connected with you, connected with your audience right now. I'm not alone. We prayed before coming on here, so I know God's with me. So yeah, when I kicked in the door, my brother had been deceased for 3 days, and it just I think paints a good kind of analogy for what addiction does. Addiction wants to wants to keep people isolated and alone, and you don't hear many people drinking themselves to death or dying of overdoses in large groups. It usually happens alone. And also the fact that my brother's house was like tucked away in the shadows of the hills of Beverly Hills. It's just the house was just never warm. It was always cold and dark and unfriendly. And that's how he died. He died in a cold, unfriendly, dark corner of what people think is just the top. And it doesn't matter what kind of education he had. An MBA from Georgetown. He was smart as anything. I was always jealous of his intellect and his social abilities to connect with people. But it was fueled by addiction for a good 20 years.
Well, God bless your brother. Rest in peace. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, his name's Matt Mabry, and he's one of the reasons, with the big reasons why I do what I do today, and working in the field of addiction to try to get people to go get the help that they need.
All right, so I know what I'm familiar with some of your sobriety date, I believe, or what your sobriety date is. And so I know that it's not like you kicked in that door and then all of a sudden you just decided, that's it, I'm quitting, right? So why don't you go on past that and kind of take me through the years after that?
Yeah, so things just got worse after that. We did get out of California. We knew we didn't want to raise our kids out there. And my wife was she's from Chicago, and I'm from Texas. And so it was too cold to go there, too cold to go to Chicago, too hot to go to Texas. And we decided on Tennessee, Nashville as a good kind of middle ground.
Okay, so this is like 2008, 2009, right in that
So
area?
yeah, 2009. We moved out here in July 2009.
Okay, about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's then, I know this is a complicated question for you because I asked you right before we got started here. And that is your sobriety date is, and you may want to explain that in the way you want to explain it. So go ahead and talk about your sobriety date.
So, so my sobriety date, to be completely honest, is September 17th of this year.
Okay.
So it is.
Go ahead.
I have like the rest of my story, the rest of my life. There's ups and downs, and most recently, my down was cross addiction of pornography. I felt I had the drugs and alcohol under control, and even as somebody that does public speaking and working in the treatment industry, I wasn't working a rigorous program of recovery, of 12-step recovery, that as rigorous as I needed to be. And I was just getting by, and if that. And I was using my work as my recovery, as opposed to my 12-step meetings, as opposed to continuing my step work, diving in deeper as I need to with my mentor. And it opened the door for a cross addiction to come in. And that being pornography had been something I've dealt with over the years, kind of in and out, but it came with vengeance this past really kind of 6 months. And the fact that my wife and I had been married for 14 years through all of my, I first entered recovery in 2011, and I've had a handful of relapses. And then the last time I got sober was 2015, and I had a good 2 years sobriety, the longest I'd ever had. And then the pornography crept in. And when that crept in for me, it put even more tension on the marriage than had ever been there before, because of all the stuff that we've had in the past. And then my wife, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and my drinking sobriety date is September 17th as well, because it led to me drinking as a result of covering up for the pornography. And so I'm here to tell you, if you replace one addiction with another, to try not to do the first one, it leaves the door open, or left the door open for me, for my drug of choice to come in. And as of today, we are about 3 weeks into our divorce process, and I'm 82 days sober, and I am vowed to go through this divorce process completely sober. And I have a lot of support around me to help me do that, more support than I've ever had.
Yeah, well, God bless you. Yeah, I've had a lot of people on Sober Speak who are multi years sober. I mean, 40 plus, 30 plus, 20 plus, time after time. And I told myself that this year I wanted to have people that were closer to the fire, if you will, and who I just, here's the deal, whether you're 4 days sober or 4 months sober or 40 years sober, we all deal with the same thing, right? And I want people to hear a variety of experiences, just so that they can say, maybe if that guy or gal can do it, I can too. So, like I said at the top of this, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that I appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to share. And I think this will help a lot of people, John. All right. So what else? So we did a fast forward there after we got from out of San Diego, coming back over to Nashville. I said, so that's been about 10 years ago. What else? What happened during those 10 years?
Somebody asked me the other day, what was the question? What was kind of the breaking point for me to go get help? That's really what it was. Is what made me go get help for the first time? What was the wake up call? What was my bottom initially? And what it was I had gotten in with Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey's a radio personality.
Yeah.
Get people out of debt.
Financial Peace University, I think.
Yes.
So is that why you went to Nashville? He's out of Nashville, right?
No, that's not why we came here. But I knew he was here, and my parents were listening to the listeners of the show. They told me about it. I was listening to it when I was out in Los Angeles. I was like, man, that would be cool if I could get a job there. So we moved here. And I started interviewing, and the interview process for Dave Ramsey is extremely rigorous. Back then in late 2010, I had to go through 7 interviews over 4.5 months. And he says this publicly. He says, the reason I have so many interviews is every time I hire a crazy person, I put in a new level of interviewing because I hate hiring crazy people. So here comes me. I'm on a lot of different prescription medications and a lot of alcohol. And I have a lot of acting experience under my belt at this point. I've been acting my whole life. Really, it wasn't just the acting classes in LA that helped. I've been acting my whole life, letting people think that I'm somebody other than who I really am. This broken, insecure, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me. That was always underneath the surface. So I'm an actor my whole life. And so I went in there for these interviews, and I got through them, and I ended up getting hired. I got hired on. And I'm on the phones talking to churches, calling churches on behalf of Dave Ramsey.
So was it like a sales
Essentially,
job?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was kind of a live event sales team.
Okay.
We call and get churches to sign up for tickets and things.
Gotcha.
And apparently in the fine print, when you get hired on, I missed the part where they said, don't drink vodka and pop pills at the desk while calling churches on behalf of Mr. Dave Ramsey at his company. So I got called into his office one morning, got my boss grabbed his boss, and we got in an elevator, and I was like, this just seems kind of weird. There's a weird energy in this elevator right now. This is a little different than what I was expecting going to a company meeting. And they go, instead of us going like to the right to go to the company-wide meeting on every Wednesday morning, they took me to the left, and we walk. I'm going, oh, maybe we're going to HR. Maybe I'm getting like, a raise or something. And we walk past HR's office, and we go to Dave's office. And there's Dave sitting at the round table in his office off to the side of his main desk. And I sit down with my 2 bosses and HR and Dave. And he just says, John, look, you obviously need some help. And I can't help you in the way that you need help. But what I can do is I can let you go. And therefore, I'm going to let you go so you can go get the help that you need. And that was a great wake-up call. That was the wake-up call I needed, somebody that I looked up to and respected outside of my family telling me you have a problem.
Have you talked to Dave since you have gotten into recovery?
I haven't. No, I've attempted to contact him through his office. So as a result of this, well, I can go into that a little bit later if time permits. But my boss, my boss's boss, who is one of Dave's right-hand men, I have seen him, and I have been able to make amends to him for my actions there at the office and how it affected him and his team, how it affected the team. But I haven't yet seen Dave yet. Well,
that's interesting. You're one of a handful of people in the world who has gotten terminated by the actual Dave Ramsey.
Well, I think ticked a lot of people off, because now if you go to his website, it says the interview process is 9 interviews. And so it used to be 7 when I was there, and he says he adds a layer every time he lets a crazy person in. So jokingly, I say I added 1 or 2 levels of interviewing. So anybody going to interview now, I'm sorry, but if you just show up sober, you'll be ahead of the game.
Oh, that's hilarious. Or, well, I mean, it's hilarious in some ways and a little bit sad in others, right? All right. So so take me on from the Dave Ramsey and how you got into the field you're in nowadays.
So yeah, multiple rounds of treatment over the next several years, inpatient, outpatient, sober living. I've done a lot of that. At one point had gotten where my wife had kicked me out and was living in a trailer on the banks of the Cumberland River here outside of Nashville.
Your wife was living in the trailer, or you were in the trailer?
No. She got to live in she earned the nice house with the children. I did not. That was a consequence. My consequences started to build. First a job loss, Then it's, financial, now I'm paying for multiple rounds of treatment. So there's financial consequences starting to pile up. No insurance for the family because I'm kind of unemployable for a period of time. So those started to build up tension in the home and the marriage, right? Another kid comes along, and next thing you know, I'm waking up in a trailer with a roommate named Beaver, and no joke, man. And in my presentations,
was Beaver a man or a woman?
He was a boy. He was 18, 20-year-old kid, just with hairy beard, and he was from the sticks of Tennessee. And going from the Playboy mansion to a trailer with a roommate named Beaver. I can't make this up. After being fired by Dave Ramsey, this is real life. It's my life. So, yeah, multiple rounds of treatment. Saw how I was, saw different elements of treatment that worked for me, that didn't work for me. The consistent message that I was being taught along the way was 12-step programs, and those have always been something I've come back to if I wasn't working it the way I should have been. I always try to find an easier, softer way. I'll work the steps for a little bit, and then I'll back off, and life starts to kind of simmer down a little bit. Relationships start to come back into better form. Start to get a little bit of work here and there, and I start letting off the gas a little bit. Last time that I was in treatment was in 2015 and I went to Addiction Campuses facility, and that's who I've been working for them for almost 3 years now. And there was just a level of compassion within the staff there that other treatment centers I saw didn't have. And so that's what drew me to want to work for this organization over anybody else, was that I saw firsthand on campus how I was treated with so much compassion. And so, and here's a great thing that came out of the turmoil. So I get fired by Dave Ramsey. And what happened was I didn't have a resource to turn to. I earned the right to be fired and be let go. Now, what I wasn't provided was a resource. Here's a phone number to call. Here's a local treatment center, or here's somebody to call. So I've been able to develop through my work now with a drug-free workplace training program. And so I go into businesses, we do it for free. And I go in and just train employees and supervisors on things to look for in the workplace. If somebody's struggling, if you smell something on somebody, if somebody's showing up late, their eyes are always bloodshot, and how to handle those situations. A lot of it's safety oriented. A lot of it's, you don't want somebody to get hurt on the job. You don't want somebody that might be using, drugs or alcohol on the job to go injure themselves or somebody else. And so I'm able to take, what was a bad situation at Dave Ramsey and turn that into, hey, I saw an opportunity. God presented me with the wherewithal to go, hey, here's an opportunity that now we train thousands and thousands of people throughout the year, and employees and supervisors on what to look for if somebody's struggling at work, how to handle those situations, and to have a compassionate approach to this, and not just maybe somebody doesn't need to be fired right away, but maybe somebody just needs to hear from somebody that they're cared for, and that, hey, I noticed you're showing up late, a lot the last few weeks. Is there something going on you want to talk about? And open up a dialogue within an HR department to allow people to maybe come forward and say, you know what, I'm going through a divorce, or my child's struggling in school and it's causing, stress, or we're having some financial issues at home, and allowing people a voice and to be heard, because the workplace in the place where, typically you get real personal, but it's where a lot of us spend most of our time is at work. And so I'm just trying to do my little part the best I can, to train supervisors, HR managers, to allow employees to come forward and ask for help when they need it, and to give them a resource to go to, and let them know what treatment resources are available in the area that they can send somebody to.
Right. Well, John M., I really enjoyed our conversation. I just want to ask a couple questions here before we go, and I also want to say this. First of all, my main concern is I just want you and your family to be well. And it sounds like you're on the right track. Do you feel comfortable like you're on the right track right now?
What's crazy is I think this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever gone through. based on what family members and friends have told me, that divorce is the most difficult thing that they've ever been through. I've been through my brother's death. I've been through my leg amputation. I've never been through this before, so I'm absolutely terrified on one side. But on the other side, there's definitely a sense of peace today, because I've surrounded myself with additional mentors, additional sponsors. I'm doing things differently. I'm doing things a little bit differently now than I have in the past. I'm scheduling more things during the week with people in recovery, so I'm around it more and more instead of isolating, because it's really easy for me to isolate. I'm going to a movie here in an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to a movie with a buddy from one of my 12-step programs. I'm helping take meetings to other treatment centers throughout the week. Up my meetings to 5 to 6 12-step meetings a week. And I'm spending a lot of time there's a new place here in Nashville called the Nashville Recovery Center. That's where I'm doing this interview from right here, is one of the therapy offices in the Nashville Recovery Center. And it's a place where people can come anytime, day or night, for free and hang out. And there's big screen TVs downstairs and a foosball table and a pool table. And they have 12-step meetings here all throughout the week. And so I've been spending a lot of time here to just surround myself with a core group of people that can help me get through this. Because on my own devices, I'm not going to be able to do it.
And when the fire gets off your butt, so to speak, in 6 months or a year or whatever, don't forget what it's like, right? To pull back, and what sort of challenges that can come from that. So I'm sorry, I usually don't give out advice. I just kind of like to share experience, strength, and hope. But I think I just did, John M. So one question I want to ask for you, and if you had a particular, you don't have to say a name, you can, but if you have a role model in recovery, who would that be and why would that be?
My role model in recovery would be, man, he's really come through here, is my new SA sponsor. Am I allowed to say that?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
So why don't you, for those who don't know what SA is, go ahead and talk about that and what you mean.
Man, SA is not something I ever thought I would sign up for. AA was one thing, coming forward in AA and NA meetings. SA is Sex Anonymous, Sexaholics Anonymous. And I have, joined that program recently. Gentleman that I heard in some meetings just share some amazingly vulnerable truths of his past, drew me to him. And he is my role model right here, right now. I got to hear him share his story at a meeting yesterday. And here's the kind of person he is. He had me out to his house on Thanksgiving because I'm separated from my wife right now. And we're not doing the holidays as normal this year with the children. That I went to the sponsor's house on Thanksgiving. He invited me out there. My son's 8th birthday was 2 days ago, and so I wasn't able to be there for that. So we're going to my sponsor's house tomorrow, and we're having cake and ice cream and pizza over at my sponsor's house tomorrow. I mean, he's opening up his house for me to be able to spend time with my children there, and I mean that's what the program of recovery offers. Is you're not going to find. I never found a drug dealer or a pill distributor or an alcoholic that would do something that meaningful without question. And so this guy is somebody I'm leaning on heavily and really look up to.
Oh, God bless you. God bless you. God bless your family. And I just pray for peace and for comfort for you and your family. We all just hang in there one day at a time, Mr. John M. And you never know when it's going to be your turn or my turn in the barrel, so to speak. And that's why we all don't have these crises, if you will, all on the same day. So we can be there to help each other out, right?
And thank you so much for what you do. It's been an honor being on your show. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
All right. God bless.